Paul Cotter has been suspended 2 games by the NHL, and also Dougie Hamilton might be ready to go before the start of the playoffs. We have a lot to break down in today's episode of Locked On Devils. Buckle up, everybody.
You're Locked On Devils, your daily podcast on the New Jersey Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, this is Bryce Salvador, and you're Locked On Devils with Trey Matthews.
Scores! Oh, Steven stepped up, nailed it. Brodor's got the puck. What a shot. The Devils win the Stanley Cup.
Alrighty now, what is up, New Jersey? Welcome back to Locked On Devils podcast here at the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Chalky Play Announcer, Devils Wire Pucks Pitchforks, and also part-time credential media member, Trey Matthews. We are nearing the end of the regular season, ladies and gentlemen. We are now down to 2 games on the docket for the Devils. When this episode goes live, they are scheduled to play the Boston Bruins in Beantown. I know the Bruins have had their struggles this year, but remember what they did to the Devils just a few days ago? They put up a touchdown and an extra point. The Bruins seem to always have the Devils' number for whatever reason. I'm hoping that New Jersey can redeem themselves. And then the very next day, the Devils will close out the regular season at the Prudential Center against the Detroit Red Wings. Real quick, before the start of the season, I picked the Red Wings to be my sleeper team, the team that I'm rooting for, because I felt as though they had a good mix of players. They had players like Dylan Larkin, Lucas Raymond, Mo Seider, and a mix of veteran players who are champions like Vladimir Tarasenko or Patrick Kane, the greatest American player to ever play the sport of hockey, in my opinion. Yet they still missed the playoffs. They haven't been to the playoffs in like 10 years? And I think people are starting to grow a little frustrated. The front office is going to have to go back to the drawing board. Speaking of which, is this the last we'll see of Steve Yzerman and his master plan? I don't really know. I will just say this. The NHL is a better place when original 6 teams are successful, with all due respect. I want to see the Red Wings back in the playoffs, and I really thought it was going to be their year, but I guess they're just going to have the mentality of get them next year. Let's tie it back to the Devils, shall we? Speaking of Michigan, let's talk about a Michigan native, Paul Cotter. In the first segment of today's episode, we're going to talk about Paul Cotter's incident on Sunday on Adam Pelech, because the verdict is in and Cotter is going to have to pay the piper. Then in the second segment, let's do an update on some Devils prospects. I think a lot of you were rooting for the Boston University Terriers. Similar to me, I was in the same boat as you because of Jay Pandolfo, the head coach, former Devil, who won 2 cups, Shane LaChance, and also the big one, Mike Yegorov. Unfortunately, the Terriers fell short, but let's do an update, shall we? Let's talk more about LaChance, Yegorov, and also Cam Squires. That's an interesting name that hasn't been talked about in a good while. No, he doesn't play for the Terriers, but he will be joining Utica. Then in the third and final segment, Dougie Hamilton might be making a return just in the nick of time for the playoffs. I think it's time for us to do the Dougie once again. But before we get into all that, let's talk about Paul Cotter and his incident on Sunday. If you need a reminder, in the second period against the Islanders, Paul Cotter laid a hit on Adam Pelech, and unfortunately, Cotter's shoulder made contact with Pelech's face. Pelech immediately fell down to the ground. He had a trail of blood dripping down from his face. He was holding his head. He's dealt with head injuries in the past. He was yelling all sorts of expletives towards Cotter. I think he said, "You effing dunce, F you." Now, people on my social media feed were claiming that Pelech said a different word that began with the letter C, but I do not want this video demonetized, and quite honestly, I don't think I'm allowed to say it on the network, so I'm just going to move past that. Pelech was just not happy. Referees reviewed it, and Paul Cotter was given a game misconduct, so he hit the showers early. And I even said it in yesterday's episode that I think a suspension might be pending for Cotter. And the results are in. Cotter will, in fact, be suspended. Here's what the NHL sent out. They said, Devils forward Paul Cotter has been suspended for 2 games, essentially the rest of the regular season, without pay for an illegal check to the head of Islanders defenseman Adam Pelech during NHL game number 1277 in New Jersey on Sunday, April 13th. The NHL's Department of Player Safety announced today. The incident occurred in the second period. Cotter was assessed a match penalty. Under the terms of the collective bargaining agreement and based on his average annual salary, Cotter will forfeit $8,072.92. The money goes to the Players' Emergency Assistance Fund. Now, why was Cotter ultimately suspended? Well, courtesy of Daniel Amoya, he posted this on his social media account. He said, the puck is played out of the Devils zone in the attempted pass to Cotter. With Pelech positioned by the red line, the puck comes to Pelech, who makes a one-touch play to dump it back into the zone. After Pelech plays the puck, Cotter leans into a high, hard check that cuts across the front of Pelech's body, missing his core and picking his head, making it the main point of contact on a hit where such head contact was avoidable. The elements of the illegal check to the head rule are satisfied on this play. First, the head is the main point of contact as Cotter's shoulder makes direct contact with Pelech's head, and it is the head that absorbs the majority of the force. Second, the head contact on his hit is avoidable. Cotter takes a poor angle of approach, choosing an angle that causes him to cut across the front of Pelech's body, missing his core. Cotter then raises his left leg and leans into the contact, causing his shoulder to make direct contact with Pelech's head with requisite force for supplemental discipline. If Cotter wants to deliver this check, he must take an angle that hits through the shoulder and core rather than one that makes the head the main point of contact. To summarize, this is an illegal check to the head. Cotter has been neither fined nor suspended previously in his 217-game NHL career. The Department of Player Safety has suspended Paul Cotter for 2 games. Okay, obviously that's a lot to digest. Going back to the episode that I conducted yesterday, I still stand by it. I get what the NHL ultimately determined, but I felt as though Cotter didn't mean anything egregious, and Paul Bissonnette and the TNT crew broke it down during the intermission. Sometimes things just happen in real time and you can't really make a split-second decision. You got to move at the speed of light at times. Basically, the point that Paul Bissonnette was trying to make was, did Cotter take a bad angle? Yes, but I think he was also trying to avoid Pelech's stick, and by the time he realized that he was in a bad position, it was just too little too late, and everything was just instinct afterwards. Remember, Cotter leads the Devils in hits this season. Not only that, he broke the Devils single season hits record. He's never been suspended or ejected before. He just made a mistake, took a wrong angle. He tried to apologize soon afterwards, but Tony DeAngelo and company, they got on him quickly. They wanted to defend their teammate. Not going to fault them in that regards. I don't think it's a big deal on Cotter's end. Now, let me make this clear. I do wish Pelech the best. I hope he recovers well if he is dealing with a head injury. But for Cotter, it just gives him some time to rest before the start of the playoffs. We saw that Stefan Nason was scratched in the previous game for the same reason, just trying to get some rest and some recovery, get your body right. Cotter's a physical player. The Devils are going to need his physicality against the Hurricanes. I'm not really all that upset with the NHL's ruling. I agree with Paul Bissonnette. I don't think there was anything egregious by it. Yes, Cotter took a bad angle, but sometimes things just happen in a split second and you don't have time to react and everything is just instinct afterwards. Cotter's laid a lot of hits throughout the course of the year, obviously. He's the record holder for the Devils. He just laid a bad hit in this sort of aspect. So, yeah, Paul Cotter has to pay the piper, but I'm not really going to harp on it too much. I think it'll do more good for him in the end, give him a chance to rest his body, recover, and get ready for the start of the playoffs. All right. We're going to talk about some Devils prospects that need to be highlighted. But before we continue, let me tell you guys about Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help you keeping fuller all day long. Personally, I love the no shells variety. It's the perfect grab and go snack for busy days, constantly on the road, constantly traveling. I love a snack by my side. Get snacking and get cracking with a snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Okay, let's talk some prospects for the Devils. I think everybody saw the national championship game between the Boston University Terriers and the Western Michigan University Broncos. Actually, a fun fact for you. In the first segment, I talked about Paul Cotter. Did you know that Paul Cotter is an alum of Western Michigan University? He played for the Broncos during the 2018-2019 season. He only appeared in 8 games. He later joined the London Knights of the OHL. Just wanted to make that sort of connection between the Broncos and the Devils. Not sure if the Broncos hold a special place in Cotter's heart or not, but hey, he should be happy. His old school ended up becoming national champions. But moving on, the Broncos defeated the Terriers 6-2 in the championship game. Wasn't the best showing for Jay Pandolfo's squad. Mike Yegorov didn't really have his best performance. We'll talk about Yegorov momentarily because I want to talk about his steady improvement from the USHL to college hockey. It's been incredible. But let's talk about Shane LaChance. Need a refresher as to who Shane LaChance is? Well, the Devils got him from Edmonton for facilitating an existing trade between the Oilers and Bruins for Trent Frederick. He was captain for the Terriers this season. He appeared in 40 games. He had 12 goals, 18 assists for a grand total of 30 points. Last season, he also appeared in 40 games, 13 goals, 14 assists for a grand total of 27 points. Why am I talking about LaChance? Well, according to Frank Saravelli, the Devils recently signed LaChance to his entry-level contract. At the time of this recording, I haven't gotten official word from the Devils. I haven't received any official press releases. So I think they're still working out the details. Maybe that'll change once this episode goes live. But for the time being, it's anticipated that LaChance will sign his entry-level contract. LaChance was sort of forgotten about in the midst of the Devils trade deadline stories, or lack thereof, because a lot of people were frustrated with Tom Fitzgerald. But I don't really know what to make of LaChance. The Oilers drafted him in the 6th round back in 2021. But here's a fun fact for you. His father, Scott, is a longtime Devils scout. So some family connections between the Devils and LaChance. Maybe that's why the Devils were keen on bringing LaChance over in the trade and getting his draft rights. But nonetheless, I think LaChance has potential. I'm going to have to consult with Joseph Stanislaw, who is my draft expert. For the time being, I just wanted to give you guys some information on LaChance. He's obviously a good player. He was captain for Jay Pandolfo's squad. They went to the national tournament, almost won the entire thing. So close, but no cigar. Now, let me tell you guys about a prospect who's a friend of this show and someone I have big expectations for, and that is Mike Yegorov. Yegorov's steady improvement the last few seasons has been incredible. 2023-2024 season, while playing for the Lancers, he appeared in 43 games. He had a record of .825-3, a goals against average of 3.86, and a save percentage of .892. He was actually ranked the #1 goalie in North America going into the draft. Why did he fall under so many teams' radars? My educated guess is that they saw his stats and they were just like, he's on a bad team. He's not really a good goalie. Why should we take a chance on him? Well, for the teams that pass on Yegorov, I'm not a psychic, but I think they're going to regret their decision because he faced a lot of shots while playing for the Lancers. With all due respect to the Lancers program, they have not been a good team the last few years. They've made a lot of coaching changes, and Yegorov, unfortunately, he was the victim of their not so good recent success. When he appeared on this show back in January, he was still playing for the Lancers. He had appeared in 19 games. He had a goals against average of 3.12, a .912 save percentage, and he had a record of 3-12-3. He was committed to play at Boston University. We didn't know when he was going to make the transition from the USHL to the NCAA. But basically, people started to learn more about Yegorov and his story, his upbringing. I've talked about how there are so many good Russian goalies in the NHL. Yegorov has a chance to be one of them. I've talked about Andrei Vasilevsky, Sergei Bobrovsky, Igor Shesterkin, Ilya Sorokin. The list goes on. I think Yegorov can become one of those players. Once he joined the Terriers halfway through the year, he saw new life. 18 game appearances, 2.15 goals against average, a .927 save percentage, one shutout. I was actually in attendance for that. A record of 11-6-1. And throughout the course of the tournament, with the exception of the championship game, he didn't really have his best outing. Yegorov was pretty solid in between the pipes. I think his best showing was during the national semifinal against Penn State when the Terriers won 3-1. Yegorov is really good, and I think he's going to spend another season with the Terriers. Jay Pandolfo even told me that they're in no rush to show him the door. They want to keep him around as long as they potentially can. The Lancers play-by-play announcer, great guy, his name is Frank, he even said that Yegorov could possibly be an heir to Martin Brodeur. I've talked about it on the show before. I talked about it with Jay Pandolfo. Let's crawl before we walk, but I definitely see a lot of potential in Yegorov. Disappointing end to the Terrier season. I hope they get to that same point next season and actually win the entire thing. I was rooting for BU all the way, and I also appreciate their hospitality when I visited their arena back in February when I was covering the Four Nations tournament. All right, let's talk about another Devils prospect, and his name is Cam Squires. The Devils announced that forward Cam Squires has been assigned from Cape Breton of the QMJHL to the Utica Comets. Cape Breton was eliminated from the playoffs on April 7th, and Squires led the Eagles with 75 points, 24 goals, 51 assists in 58 games played this season. I've had the pleasure of seeing Cam Squires play during development camp. I've actually conducted a one-on-one interview with him a couple times. Great kid. His future is definitely bright, and we were talking about it in the Pucks and Pitchforks group chat. I think he definitely has a lot of potential, similar to Mike Yegorov, another underrated prospect that the Devils might have found. So keep an eye out for Cam Squires and what he potentially can do. Utica's season is winding down, and they're not going to make the playoffs, so we're going to have to wait a little bit before we actually see Cam Squires put on a show. It's going to take some time for him to adjust, but just wanted to give Cam Squires the credit he deserves. He's a really good prospect. All right. From prospects to already established NHL players, the Devils might get some help before the start of the playoffs. Before we talk about it, let me tell you guys about Upwork. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more. Experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives business flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. If you need help with a marketing campaign, Upwork can connect you with a freelance expert who delivered incredible results. Visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's Upwork.com to connect with top talent and grow your business today. Okay, I talked about Dougie Hamilton before. I had my doubts, but he might be set to return come the first round of the playoffs. Sheldon Keefe was recently asked about the plan for Seamus Casey. Are they preparing to use Casey come the playoffs? And Sheldon Keefe responded and said, the team is preparing for Dougie Hamilton to be ready to go before the start of the first round. He actually warmed up prior to the game against the Islanders. Obviously, he did not play. Getting Dougie Hamilton back before the start of the playoffs, regardless of what you guys think of Dougie, that's actually big for them for a few reasons. For starters, that adds more bodies on the Devils' blue line because I think depth has been a big issue. I've been seeing a lot of people debate whether or not the Devils should play Shimon Nemitz or Seamus Casey. How about we take some of the pressure off of their shoulders and get Dougie Hamilton back into the lineup? I think that's a big upgrade if you ask me. I see a lot of potential in both Nemitz and Casey, but let's face it, I don't think either of them are ready for a lengthy run in the playoffs. In fact, I don't think the Devils are going to go all that far, but I have more faith in Dougie Hamilton. That's the point I'm just trying to make. Dougie is also great offensively. The Devils sometimes struggle to create offense. We saw it in the previous game against the Islanders. What did Eric Haula say post-game? He said that the Islanders did a good job of keeping the Devils on the perimeter. The Devils had trouble penetrating in order to create point-blank chances in front of Sorokin. Getting Dougie back, he has a great slap shot. So maybe if Dougie lets a shot rip from the point, it can create a chance out in front. He can either score it himself or that creates a rebound chance for one of his teammates out front, and Dougie still walks away with an apple. A lot of people are conflicted when it comes to Dougie Hamilton. In fact, I see a lot of people saying that the Devils should move on from Dougie. He's not important anymore. He costs too much money. And I'm just like, well, first and foremost, he'll leave when he wants to leave. He has a no movement clause and a modified no trade clause that's going to kick in next season. He's not going anywhere, just to make things perfectly clear. But I've gotten so sick and tired of the Dougie Hamilton slander. The Devils are not a better team without Dougie Hamilton, and that should have been proven last year. Losing big pieces like Jonas Siegenthaler, Jack Hughes, and Dougie Hamilton, that's a big blow for the Devils. To get one of them back, that's huge, especially since Tom Fitzgerald went on a Kraken and Canucks sanctioned podcast and basically said that Dougie was going to miss the rest of the regular season, which was true, and he would be surprised if Dougie returned like before the start of the second round. And I'm just like, okay. So essentially he's done for the rest of the year because I said it was going to be a tall order for the Devils to make it out of the first round, but I still held on to that hope. But now Dougie might be ready to go before the start of the first round. And I'm like, okay, that helps the Devils in more ways than one. Great offensively, catalyst on the power play. Almost half of his points have come via the power play. You can have your opinions on Dougie Hamilton, but getting him back is big for the Devils. And it takes some of the pressure off the young guys' shoulders, including Shimon Nemitz and Seamus Casey. Not only that, takes the pressure off of Luke Hughes. Now, don't get me wrong, Luke Hughes has been doing a good job stepping up his game ever since the Devils have been dealing with these amount of injuries to their blue line. But getting Dougie back, that does more good than harm. And I think people like Luke Hughes are going to breathe a big sigh of relief. But let me know your thoughts. Are you happy to see Dougie possibly make a return before the start of the playoffs, which is just a few days away. Believe it or not, playoffs begin April 19th. It is April 14th as I'm recording this episode. And what are your thoughts on Paul Cotter and his suspension? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment down below if you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening on a podcast streaming service. Hit me up on my personal X page app at TreyMatt4 or the show's X page app at Locked On Devils. As for today's episode, that's all the time I have for you. Thanks for listening. Continue to stay safe. Have a wonderful day in New Jersey. Go Devils. I'll catch you guys in the next episode. Thanks for listening once again.